Hi everyone, welcome to our weekly Life or Biz Wisdom Facebook Live. So tonight what I wanted to talk to you about was this thing called Parkinson's law. And I don't know if you've ever heard of it. And before you might ask the question, it actually isn't related, as far as I know, to Parkinson's disease. Perhaps it was named by the same person, but they, in terms of the illness and this productivity law or principle, they don't have a connection as far as I know. This law was created by a British gentleman in the 1950s who had served in the war and was, I think, also an economist. And of course his surname was Parkinson, so it was named after him. So what is it about and how's that going to help you? Okay, well, I'll first of all start off by saying what Parkinson's law is so that you're going to be able to be more interested to hear what I've got to say. And Parkinson's law is that we will do things in the time that they're allotted in. In other words, whatever time we've got to do something, we will generally take pretty much all that time to do it. Now, of course, I'll say this to begin with, there's always some exceptions to the rule. And as the saying goes, exceptions to the rule. But generally speaking, if we think we've got half an hour to do something, we'll tend to do it in that time and we'll do our best to get it done in that time. Similarly, if we think for the same thing we've got 3 hours to do it, I don't know about you, but I know I've been guilty of actually taking those 3 hours to do something. So the time expands or contracts for us to do something based on the time that we think we have to do it in. So if I can give you a couple of examples. What's an example from my personal life? Okay, if I've got visitors coming and I know I want to clean the house before they come and I know I've got an hour, I will use that hour. And quite often I'll be running around and I'll get all this speed and it's like, oh, I've got to do this, do this, do this, do this. Right, that's it. I'm into it. And I've got the hour and I'm making full use of that time. Lots and lots of action during that time. But if I knew all afternoon leading up to when my visitors were coming, in other words, let's say 4 or 5 hours, if I knew I had all that time to clean up, quite likely I'd actually take that long. Either I'd start off slowly and maybe I'd get a bit distracted, maybe, I'd take a break, I'd take my time doing it. And that in itself isn't a bad thing, but it might be that that's stopping me from doing something else that's more valuable with my time. Whereas, as I've said, if I think I've only got a shorter amount of time, you can bet your bottom dollar that, as I said, I'm going to be speeding up and actually getting it done, getting the cleaning done in that example. Let's use an example from our businesses. You're wanting to write, let's say, a blog post. And it might be something that particularly if there are things that we can easily put off, and that's where it can be tricky. So if I allocate myself, let's say 2 hours to write my blog post, again, I'm likely to meander through it, or in fact not even start it until the last half an hour. And this will commonly happen in terms of human behavior. So what it means is that we will act based on the perception of how much time we've got to do whatever the task is, the to-do that we want to get done. Now, what's the problem with that? Well, the problem is that, as I was saying with the example of cleaning the house, there may well be things that I could actually be doing within that time that would be more valuable for me, particularly if I'm finding that I'm actually procrastinating which obviously is a real issue with time being wasted. It's often a cause for it. So Parkinson's law can actually be used then to alleviate procrastination, or hopefully even prevent it. Because of course, when we're procrastinating, we're actually not doing what it is that's the most valuable or important or urgent thing to be done at that time. We really want to be, hi Leanne, thanks for joining. We really want to be using our time as valuable as possible, and be making conscious choices about what it is that we're actually wanting to do to get done in any given day. So it's a matter of looking at how long it takes for things to be done, and then allocating yourself a time frame that's really realistic, or in fact, even a little bit shorter than what we think it's going to take. Because what we're doing using Parkinson's law then is containing the length, putting some restriction around the length of the time that we think we've got to do something. What happens then is, like my example of running around cleaning the house, or if I was writing my blog post and I knew I only had 30 minutes to do it, and I knew that it was likely to take all that time, then I'm more than likely to actually start it straight away within that beginning of that 30-minute period, and keep focused and keep the action happening, the momentum happening to actually get it done in that time. So it has two real benefits, or two immediate benefits. One of them is that it allows us to really hyper-focus in a short period of time. If we know that we have a deadline, as I said, this contained amount of time to do something, and it's likely to take all that time, then we're going to get onto it really quickly. It's like, oh, okay, what do I do first? What do I do first? And we focus. We get really, really clear about what it is we've got to do. What are we doing first, then next? And we then get through what it is, the thing that we want to get done. So that's a real bonus of using Parkinson's law to actually limit the time that we have to do things. The other benefit, as I mentioned, is that therefore it is likely to help with procrastination. We're not going to be, if we're really hyper motivated, it's almost like we get a bit of adrenaline. It's like, okay, what are we doing? And therefore that means that we're usually, if we're in that frame of mind, not in a procrastinating frame of mind. And of course, with procrastination, there can be quite often excuses made for why we're not going to be doing it. We may well think, oh, I can do it later. I mean, how often have you said that to yourself? I know I've said it to myself before. Oh, I don't need to do it now. I can actually do it later. When in fact, if we put some time constraints around what it is we want to do, we therefore are less likely to procrastinate and do it later. Now, how to actually do this? What I'd suggest you do is to pick a few things to do, trial it out, this Parkinson's law. So if you have something particularly that you know that you can drag your feet with, or that there's a deadline that you know you cannot miss, something has to be done by a certain time, and this of course relates to your personal life or in business, then I suggest that you allot the time that you think it will take. Now, if you have the advantage of having done this before, whatever the to-do is, then you may well have an accurate idea, or a fairly accurate idea, of how long it's going to take to do it. So I would suggest that you actually put in your calendar or in your diary what that task is, or to do, and an estimate of how long it's likely to take, either based on your best guess, or, as I said, if you've done it before. Actually make an appointment with yourself in your calendar or diary to do this task. And I've talked before in other videos about the value of setting up a diary or calendar where we can actually make appointments with ourselves for our stuff, as well as for our stuff with other people. So if you have an idea of how long it's going to take, As I said, best guess or because you've done it before. Maybe what you can do then is schedule the appointment time to be just that amount of time, or maybe even a little bit less. So that way, as I said, it sort of creates a little bit of tension and the adrenaline starts to flow, and that helps. You can, as you would know, when we are having an adrenaline rush for whatever reason, we are hyper-focused. We are really concentrating on whatever that thing is that's causing that adrenaline to surge. That's just the way that it works. So we can use that to our advantage by having a shorter period of time to do something to get ourselves more focused, less likely to procrastinate. Now, you may think, well, what if we rush it and we don't have the quality? I think the thing then is to actually trial it a few times, and if you found that it really wasn't enough time to do it, as I said, it could be an example of a regular blog post, for instance, that you're writing, then adjust the times a little bit. But notice when you're doing it, knowing that you have that time, and you can set a timer on your phone, for instance, to actually have that time, have the alarm go off at the end of that time. So it's this sort of testing and measuring where you can see how long things take you and how better you might work when you have a time limit, a deadline. Now, what I've been talking about is deadlines that you set for yourself. They are the harder ones because often we can just bend the rules a little bit and take a little bit longer. And that's not too bad to do that too often. It's not too much of a problem. But if it happens habitually and we find that what we're working on creeps into the time we've set for something else, then that's when it can be cause problems. So another thing that you can do, as I said, setting the alarm. The other thing you can do is actually get an accountability buddy. And I'm really, really, really in favor of that. So there's actually apps that you can explore, looking at ones that actually you can get accountability buddies. It could be within the app. It's not a real person, but that's how the app works. So you need to actually log in and put in the times that you've done things and whether you've done them in that time period. Or you could get a friend. If it's a blog post and you're giving yourself an hour, maybe you've got a friend that you can, or a family member or somebody else to say, hey, I am doing this thing. I want to be accountable to you so that I get it done in that time, and I'll let you know how it's going, or they can check in with you, whatever way you do it. We will tend to work faster when we have external accountabilities. It's, again, I think it's largely our human condition. Having said that, there are certainly people who are super, super duper productive that, of course, can well be motivated by their own, what we call intrinsic motivations. In other words, motivations inside ourselves. It could be things like we want to improve. We know that this is what we need to be doing. We want to be working at our best. We're wanting to improve ourselves, and they can almost be competitive with themselves to want to do it faster and faster. As I said, the only caveat is ensuring that you've got the level of quality as well. You don't want to be just saying it's done, and it's done quickly, but it's actually not done in the right way. So that's a really important thing to be considering as well. So it's just a really interesting phenomenon, I think. And when we can develop our own motivation for doing things, our own self-discipline, because that's what it is, then that's what we can rely on. But until we get to that point, and maybe you have that, and if you do, that's wonderful. But for those of us that may not have that, or to a large degree, or have it for some things and not others, then it can be really useful to get these external deadlines. I mean, obviously there are external deadlines that are legitimate, that are realistic deadlines. Getting something ready for a client, getting, ready for your workshop, actually delivering a workshop or a webinar or something where you're accountable to other people in the real world, then that's a really great way of showing how Parkinson law works, to have that containment. It can be harder, as I said, with those intrinsic timelines or deadlines that we want to create for ourselves. But as I said, getting accountability buddies, working out, you can also, when it's your intrinsic motivation that you want to increase, looking at your why. What is this going to get me? If I finish this blog post, what's the purpose of doing it? What am I going to get out of it? What are my clients going to get out of it? What are the rewards, so to speak, the benefits of doing it? Hopefully that will also help with using the time that you've allotted really wisely, creating that focus, reducing the risk of procrastination, and actually getting things done. So I will leave this Facebook Live with inviting you to really consider the things that you might actually do better with if you actually reduce the amount of time you've got to do it. If any of you want any help with this, please do contact me, message me personally, or comment in the comments below. And I'm going to be looking at setting up some accountabilities within our group. So I think this is an example of something that could be really useful, where if you want some accountability to do something, you might actually be able to post, and we can see what we can do with having whoever's available to provide that accountability. I know the co-working days where you actually are working together to get things done. You might be doing it virtually or in person, and you may not actually be doing the same thing together, but you are in the same environment and you're accountable in terms of that, and that can really help. And again, that can give you that containment and a good use of Parkinson's law in that way as well. So as I said, I invite you to consider what you can allot times to, test how long something takes, give it your best guess, or if you've done it before, allot the time, really commit to getting the thing done in that time, and then see how it went for you. If you need a little bit more time next time, so be it. If you need less, that's great. A lot next time, a shorter period of time. Just test and measure, try different things and see what works for you. And I think that you will find that you'll get more done and you'll become more quicker with it. But as I said, ensuring that there's a quality there as well. Okay, that's all for now. Catch you next time. Bye.